So we'll start things with a little bit of an overview of what Atlassian has been up to from Charlie Sutton, the SVP of Design at Atlassian. Take it away, Charlie.
Thank you. And I always love how people find my accent compelling. I find the same for you. Your American accent, just your articulation. It's so tight. Those of you who've been involved in like CEO presentations, you know that every single minute of these presentations is scrutinized. And in design, we had a bit of a pinch me moment at our most recent event because Mike Cannon-Brookes up on stage is spending time talking about typefaces and icons and design. And that was really the culmination of a couple of years of work across everyone on this stage and obviously hundreds of other folk. And what we're trying to do is give you a bit of a visual taste of things so that when we're talking about anecdotes, you're not all trying to visualize what on earth we're kind of getting into. So this is really a 2.5-year journey to produce what is on this slide, both from an experience point of view and a brand point of view. And what we were ultimately starting with in Josh's team almost 2.5 years ago was actually trying to think about how we readdress all of our customers. You know, we're a 20-year-old company. Everything we have is blue. We have a certain reputation. There are websites out there that have the F-bomb followed by Jira.com. So, you know, like readdressing the market was a real need for us. And we kind of philosophically have this idea that teamwork is hard and it's messy, but ultimately it's how you get things done. And there's a real joy to the messiness. And what Josh's team did working with Pentagram all those years ago was try to really embody the spirit of this idea through changing our logos. So not having a sea of blue, but actually moving to this idea of apps with particular color system behind them. Really choosing bold colors, like those of you who've worked in B2B SaaS, you know, you've got your two things to choose from in your color palette, which is blue, gray, you get a little bit racy, maybe green. And Josh's team is coming out there with like purple and vibrant orange and black. But he really was bringing something to the table that had a lot of energy to it. And equally on the imagery side, there was this really lovely concept of collage. You know, talk to the messiness of teamwork by having messy visual devices like collage effects, which I thought really came through both photographically and in the illustration. And then we looked at our typefaces for a lot of our brand communications and tried to soften them, make them a little bit rounder so that when they sat alongside that messy collage effect and all those vibrant colors, it really worked. And Josh's team had to make it work, you know, like all great brand teams on all these different places, even on Formula One cars. And there was a really lovely moment recently where some of the visual devices that Josh's teams were creating were actually going on the uniforms of F1 drivers. There's that really lovely collision of brand and product and experience. But I think it just shows what an amazing system that had been created. And the challenge for us in design was how on earth could we bring that into the product? And I remember when Josh was doing the first presentations, we were like, purple, yeah, okay, cool. we can work with that. And so we basically, to produce this type of an experience, which is our home app, which all of our users and customers get now when they get into the Atlassian system, we had to really build everything from the ground up. So we had to completely do a new spacing grid and layout system, roll out design tokens everywhere. And obviously designers were super excited about that. Who doesn't love a new spacing and layout system? But what mattered to our customers is that we had to find a way to gain them space. So you can see on the right-hand side, everything we did, we were trying to save pixels all through the experiences so that their content was to the fore, whether it's horizontally or vertically. Then we're going to have a one and only, although it's up to this man, audience participation moment, which I know is awkward, but you can do this. I will buy a bottle of wine for someone who's closest within 10%. How many icons do you think Atlassian has? Just shout out a number. No one's within 10% yet. 11,500 icons.
Wow.
Because you've been here for 20 years and every product team did their own thing. And if you do the classic graphic designer test, you squint on the left, like you can tell they were made by many teams over 20 years. So we had to rationalize all those 11,500 icons. And as we were doing that, we thought that was a great way to bring those layers of the experience stack together. So, for example, this is the old icon for spawning a new window or a new tab. You can see there's kind of like a difference in the stroke weight of the icon. We even got down to the level of like making sure the stroke weight of icons in their medium size was the same as the stroke weight of the typefaces. So we were really trying to bring a level of craft, which I think hadn't been there before. We introduced new typefaces, and the reason we did that is because all designers design on Macs using system fonts, but of course 70% of our customers are not on Macs. So we actually had to build new typefaces that were downloaded over the browser, both a monotype and a regular font, even to the stage of having to optimize within the caching networks within our delivery servers so that we could get these typefaces down to 68K, because when you're not getting the typeface for free, you've got to deliver it very fast to the browser. We worked with all these beautiful colors. I think the big challenge for us was color has semantic meaning, right? So you can see here on the screen we've got OKRs and targets and numbers, so red and green mean something, and we had to do a ton of work to make sure that semantic meaning and personal meaning of that color system was preserved. And then Christina arrived with her talented team via Loom, and then we had a whole bunch of new colors to deal with that they were somewhat, what's the right adjective? Intense about keeping. So even though this would be like
I would say passionate.
Deservedly passionate. So you can see here that we're even having to do very fine adjustments. This is the Loom desktop recording UI to bring the color space a little bit towards the Atlassian system, but still make it feel like Loom. So a ton of other changes I won't go into in detail. Accessibility was super important for us, so changing all the components so that screen readers and other assistive devices were taken care of. And we also completely changed the navigation. And if you ever want to irritate 300,000 customers at once, change navigation on a product that's 20 years old. And this is, for most of them, what Jira looks like today. And can all take a moment? It's a little intense. And this is what it looks like today, using that new color, type, icon, and layout system. And it just breathes a lot more. And now when we introduce new apps, they all use exactly the same system. So this has been a journey of 2.5 years, obviously a bunch of experience updates made. But I think what hopefully is interesting in this room is just like, how did it actually go down? Because it was not easy, and it was not normal how it went about, and I think we're going to have a bunch of discussions about the reality.
So I think the best place to start is with Charlie. I believe you skipped over your first reaction to the colors, the new colors. Do you want to?
Josh and I have a really good relationship. We work together at Meta, and we're both non-confrontational, but my internal monologue when I saw those colors was, I'm screwed.
And I felt it.
Dude.
And this happens over Zoom, right? So what did you say, Charlie?
I think I said something like polite and Australian, like, that will be difficult to work with, but I'm sure we can find a way.
And so Josh, so you hear that? What's your sort of like response? How are you feeling about it?
I really, I respect Charlie highly, and so I was like, okay, we need to find a solution to this. So, I talked to our teams and said, we talked to Pentagram, and how can we find a solution for this? I think that's the key. Oftentimes, what I found in other similar situations is egos start to get involved, and someone has to be right. And I think with this crew up here, everyone's open, to collaboration, and it's part of teamwork. And I think it really, it really showed in what Charlie just went through. That it was difficult at times, but it was, I was pleasantly surprised at how smooth it actually went. I thought it was going to be much more difficult. What
does difficult at times mean?
Well, when I started the project, I was hired by the first CMO at Atlassian, and he charged me with a company rebrand, and left after 6 months. And so I was
always good.
So I was like, we were far down the path with Pentagram, and I was thinking like, do I keep going? Do I not keep going? Who do I even talk to about this? And everyone told me, yeah, let's just kind of keep going, but not so fast. Let's wait till we can. I was like, what does that mean? So we just kept going. Me and Charlie just kept forging forward, making the best decisions we could, involving what we thought were the right people to involve at the time. I think, yeah, it was, I think it was successful. But that was some of the challenges that came about were just, a lot of internal dynamics. Really.
Right, sure, changes, 6 months into a project, you're down the road. When you say, like, you and Charlie are like conspiring to keep going, like how do you find the right person to talk to? Like, how do you find the right, other executives to involve? Do you guys just sort of keep this off on the side? How did that work?
Well, I think the only executives that we really involved at the time were the two founders, which were the great ones to have.
That does
involved.
seem important.
Yeah, but they were, they have limited time, and so we weren't able to like take them through every step. So I think every time there was a bunch of progress, we were like crossing our fingers that it was like it was going to be well received. And I think there was a bit of maybe luck involved, as well as I think we made the right calls as we went on.
So you had the right other relationships, new folks come in, but you still have the old relationships, which probably helped there.
Yeah.
And then I think probably Christina and the Loom team came along at that point. Is that the right sort of sequence of events?
Yeah, I'm not sure at what point in your color approval journey we came in, but in a sea of blue with now a new expression of color, and then you insert another purple into the mix with Loom, you're then left with even a different color problem, is that you almost have too many purples. And so then this conversation came about around what does purple mean, and how do our new teammates at Atlassian understand that a lot of the intent with purple was so much around making video more friendly, making it more approachable. If it's purple, it's something that anyone can pick up. But I think even having our teams understand that was such a conversation that I pulled Charlie and Josh in rooms together and I said, yo, we need to talk. Like, my team's really passionate about this purple. If I tell them that I can kick the can down the road at least a few more quarters, I think we'll be in a good retention place. But it's amazing the emotions that come up, I think, in a brand and all of our teams of like what they're so attached to and what they're building. And you don't realize that, I think, until when they're challenged. And then you're like, oh, wow, color is your number one priority. Okay, so if we're going to go to bat with this, then like let's have the right conversations, pull the right people in the room. And
I think the real talk, purple, we're talking about colors and everyone's like, how controversial can that be? But I remember Christina, one of our first meetings together, it's like, well, you've got to understand, Charlie, that the Loom brand is very friendly and approachable, and we really treasure that experience. And on the Atlassian side, we're like, we also would like to be inapproachable.
I know, it's a backhanded.
Yeah.
So how do you get through that, right? Because this is a conversation that all of us have with different people, like where you're like, what are you talking about? Like, do you just directly challenge each other? Do you gently wander your way into it? What happens?
I think you come in with an open mindset. I will say with the Loom acquisition, first and foremost, it's absolutely a people challenge. You have to get people bought into a company that they didn't even join. And it's like getting married without dating. And you have to really find almost these personal incentives and almost matchmake, knowing the personalities of the team, what they care about, if it's color, if it's, interaction design, if it's a single sign-on experience. I'm not sure what it is, but those kind of, again, come out in these conversations. And so I think really tuning in to saying, hey, let's talk, we're open, it's a two-way conversation. It is not, we are being, adopted or folded into this parent company and we have no say. It is about showing that there is agency. And it's still a muscle I continue to build with the team, and they come up in ways that I'm surprised at in different conversations. But, I think we're still talking about color, actually. But we're getting there.
How did the team bring it up with you? So the team is like, they're ruining our purple, and we have a friendly brand, and they have an unfriendly brand, and was that...
Not at all.
Is that not how it worked?
No, it was more just, we don't want to be blue. That's how the team brings it up. When they're in a time of change, the directness comes out, and then it's about really double-clicking into those questions as to, well, what is it about the color? And what is it, and whether friendly, not friendly, and I don't think that was the intent of the implication at all. But I just think it's the pride that comes with that. Yeah. And how can you really work with your teams and those individuals to put the pride, not to not acknowledge it, but to really say, well, what are we doing together as a team, and what's the mission here? And our mission was very much of a shared mission between Loom and Atlassian. I think it is still a company OKR in terms of making Loom the best acquisition ever. And so that already sets the tone that there is shared ownership across the board.
So I think it's also, Josh has been through this and Christina's been through it, that there's a natural identity protection thing that happens when a small team goes into a big team, like whether it's a feature level or a company level, is you define yourself by not being the other thing. It's just a human nature, like we saw it at Meta with his, Instagram was not Facebook and Oculus was not Instagram. And it's just a natural thing that teams do. And I think what Christina was able to do is make sure that it wasn't an othering process. It's like Loom was not defined by it being different to Atlassian. And she found a lot of common ground between the teams. And I think then the identity trap wasn't so hard to get out of.
Yeah. So, Josh, then, there's this brand, there's a color discussion, and you've carefully crafted this other identity, and then someone else demands to keep a different purple, maybe nicely, I assume, yeah. What is that conversation like for you? Like, what happened then?
Well, when Christina was talking, I was my first thought was like, I had a lot of empathy for the team. I thought, like, wow, they've built something really great that they feel passionate about. So let's, again, it's similar to how I just like my teams to work. It's like, let's find common ground. Like there is no like right answer necessarily, but how can we figure out a path forward without stomping out that passion? And so that's kind of how I talk to my team about it. Let's like, how can we find a solution and a path forward that everyone's happy with and feels bought into and brought along with.
Was there a point where someone said, I don't want to do this, why are they adding it? Or was it generally open, empathetic?
There might have been. I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it, though. There might have been.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard it.
So, certainly top-down mandate, it sounds like you guys had relationships with the right folks. Loom comes along. We've all been dealing with this AI change. David, you onboarded, I think, right? Was it Config last year? Is that, and you work on AI, right? That is your focus, right?
Yeah. I just want to add, not only did I decided to bring a purple button, but also a gradient too, because everything AI is gradients too. So
gotta have
another layer of that.
Are there
too.
sparkles?
Yeah.
Did you put sparkles on it?
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other story. Anyway, yeah, it was around this time last year. Config. I was planning to take a bit of a break after my time at Replit, and then chat with Charlie, talked to Maria, who was running the team in the interim, just about the scenario, and we all kind of know this 30, 60, 90. Mine was like negative 30 days, 5 days, and 15, just to on-ramp, get context.
So before you started, you were starting?
I started before I started.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. But it's just a thing where it's like, I think just thinking about whatever it takes, just in this space that's so disruptive right now with AI, like there's a lot of these, nascent tools and capabilities, and you see it online just about like every other day there's like a new breakthrough or something like that. And in the enterprise, it's almost even a scarier space because a lot of this nascent happens a lot on self-serve, like some of these free tools that people are playing around with. Now they want to bring it to the workplace, right? So when I joined, I think it was my first day, it was like, hey, Rovo, our AI app, is going to GA in 8 weeks. And I almost had like an inverse challenge where it's like, okay, I don't have time to kind of think through all these colors and all these other integrations. It's like, we got to ship this thing. We're adding new interfaces and control layers. How do we collaborate with the team to be like, we got to get this thing out there? Maybe incur some of the UI debt that we want to like reconcile and fix, but it was just a thing where you had to make a call. So yeah, it was one of the most interesting onboarding experiences ever.
You're welcome.
So you start before you start. You're shipping something after you start 8 weeks later. It's shipping whether you do anything or not, it sounds like. Charlie, was that the plan? Is that your...
Totally. Look, I think the weird thing about AI in our company, and I think it's the same for a lot of people in the audience, is it sort of has this weird hall pass, which is, yeah, we'll figure it out. The market's moving quickly. We can fix those things later. And going back to what we spoke about at the beginning, you do that for long enough, then you build up enough debt in experience that you have real problems. So I think a lot of Dave and our initial discussions were, okay, I know you need to go quickly. We haven't figured out the interaction patterns yet. We hadn't even figured out some of the base constructs of agents versus chat versus search. They were all sort of Venn diagramming together. And the tension, I think, in design was, how long does the whole pass last? Because in the end, we have to make this work. And our customers don't really, and I'm sure it's the same for everyone here, they don't really have that tolerance when it's part of a larger system. I think it can be different if you're just releasing one vibe coding app and it doesn't have to integrate, but the challenge for Figma, challenge for a lot of us is the system needs to make sense. So I think even in our first minus 30 days, we were already having that discussion about how much instability and change can we tolerate before it actually starts to pull at the rest of the system. And I think that's still somewhat of an ongoing challenge today.
I think Charlie's saying I was kind of vibe managing when I was coming on board. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like, we were kind of talking about try changing a navigation for something that's been such a legacy interaction that people are accustomed to. That was a huge thing my time at One Medical is designing the stuff for the clinicians. It's like, people have other stuff to do than worrying about where things are in the UI. They're taking care of people, they're getting work done, and that's so important to kind of know that pathway. People need to know where it's going, right? Because just the people being able to get not only UI but just LLMs provide this kind of black box that a lot of companies are just figuring out how do we adopt and make sense of that.
Yeah, you were the first head of design at One Medical, right? Too. So building things for clinicians, and that's obviously you don't want to get that wrong. And those systems, yeah. And in the workplace, it's very similar. So I guess the question that I would have is you sort of went through this there's a bit of a hall pass. We're sort of accruing, almost strategically accruing debt, UI debt that we're going to fix later because we need to move quickly. And it's also all evolving. What does that conversation look like when you say we're going to accrue some debt? Is it you make a presentation that says we're accruing debt? Or do you frame it slightly differently? You said to make it interesting, Charlie.
I mean, this is the real, right? Sometimes it ships on our internal production.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is this thing, right? And just there's so much ground to cover and surface across our entire suite of apps, all of our other integrations. It's just really kind of being the only thing I think you can really do is I always tell my team, it's you got to containerize it a little bit and have conversations about these things. So it's really thinking about, I like that saying that plans are useless, but planning's indispensable. And it's kind of like this, we can plan for this interaction model, but we just saw even hours ago, there's new technologies, new capabilities that get launched too. So we kind of have to make sense of that. So I think part of it is just look, there's some things if it's a quality and relevance thing, we may need to get it out there and get feedback. But if it's something of more macro level workflow, we just need to be more cognizant of it. There's no one answer to do this, right? Everything's a little situational.
And you have a lot of proxy wars. And I think my favorite proxy war was the 2 search bars.
Sorry, proxy, you mean a proxy war in terms of different ways of doing it?
Oh, I mean something that is seemingly obvious or unimportant becomes the symbolic battleground for these larger
purple?
strategic things. Yeah, we had a huge debate about whether we have like most products, we have like a unified search bar across the top of our products, and the Rovo team was like, well, we need our own search bar. And we're like, well, but that's like 2 search bars on one page. And it became this proxy war. We had like vice presidents of products asking us to mock up different variants, trying to make it work. And you sort of started to doubt your intuition. It's like, maybe 2 search bars is a thing we could
No.
because it didn't matter, but it was symbolic of, I think, the AI team saying, we've got to try everything we can. We don't know which patterns win out. We can't have the old like central navigation team telling us how many search bars we can have. And like designers are having to mock up crazy variants to try and bring people to this strategic alignment. But it wasn't really about 2 search bars. It was about how much permission does the AI team have to look for adoption and break patterns. But it all came down to debates about search
I knew you were
bars.
going to bring this up too, so I was like, I had a Post-it note on my monitor that just said Charlie double search bar, like just kind of keep that top of my. I should have just made it another purple, really. But I think that's the thing. It's like, you know, for me as someone who's come in new, like I'm the neophyte in this group. Like
You're even, I mean, I think the whole group is less than 2 years, right? Or 2.5 years?
Yeah.
And you're 1
10
year?
months.
10 months.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, it's one of those things too. Like one of my product partners has been at Atlassian, I think 16 years. So it's like, how do you go in and like have conviction and debate with someone who's been there since the beginning, so trusted with the CEO, and you have to kind of bring this point of view. And I think the thing that, you know, when Charlie and I talk about the multiple search bars, maybe add a third one, right? But I think the thing that was important for us is like, look, like from the work that this team has done with the visual refresh, the continuity, our system of work, we have to contribute to this because, like, you know, Charlie often has the saying, like, you know, designed by one hand. And, you know, for our customers, too, rely on that. So that was the thing is we had a team that was like, anyone who works in AI right now just knows, like, how much pressure they're under. They're like, we can't wait for these things. And, you know, like, we need this corner radius to see if it has, like, better results. And it was important for us to be like, yes, like what are the things, like I think for me to be like, you know, what hill am I willing to die on or have conviction that like if I ship it, like Charlie says something, I'm going to have rationale on why we did it, right? So you also can't just wait and say we can't do anything because by that time, you know, like the industry, like the AI work is changing completely.
Yeah. Can't just wait.
I like that
Josh.
you had a Post-it that said, mine said Charlie color.
Do you have a Charlie Post-it?
Rounded corners. Charlie, rounded corners.
I like how you have like 50 years of leadership on this stage, and we've talked about colors. Because like, there's a lot of other strategic work going on.
But I think
stuff.
but it's your point about the you know, they become symbolic of something else. Yeah. And it's not, and I think all of us believe in the power of design. It's like these things are not colors, they're not rounded corners, they're about like, you know, respect and getting craft in there. And I think that's what all of you were talking about.
Yeah.
So you're all relatively new. You've all sort of talking about some huge changes, whether it's AI or, you know, a whole new type system, color palette, whether it's, you know, joining a new organization. I'd love to just hear about some of the harder moments of coming into this organization and trying to push through like a new approach to design.
I think the one that I always found difficult, you know, there's I don't know who came up with this adage is first you shape the tools and then the tools shape you. If you make structured workflow and documentation tools as a company, you become a very structured thinking organization. And I found that when I came in, the company was addicted to frameworks. It's like there's a framework for thinking for almost every problem. And design itself, at the time, I think, was like framework on top of framework. I think one of my first meetings ever at the company was how we could increase CSAT by 1.2% through this investment framework and a rubric for evaluation of usability. I was like, wow, that's a very structured way to think about these problems. And I think one of the challenges we all had as leaders when we came in is like, how do you do some form of conceptual collapse? Like you just can't have layers of frameworks because designers sit down there and go, all right, I'm going to use the good, better, best framework, and I'm going to use the rubric for evaluation of usability, and then the CSAT and the SEQ score, and they're just sitting in front of Figma trying to understand what their approach should be. So I found that very difficult, and this is someone who did philosophy in undergrad. I love me a framework, but I think design is part of our responsibility is to clarify and translate, and that means often having less. So I think, yeah, the over-intellectualization and the over-frameworking was something that I found super difficult when I came on.
So, Christina, you've joined this organization that maybe has a lot of frameworks. Is that something that you found? Is that something that you had to clarify for your team? Like, how did you approach it?
Yeah, I think there was a perception, I'll say, that there was a lot of frameworks and a lot of structure. And, it's coming from a startup, right, where your whole aura is to be scrappy and to iterate and fail and to learn fast. And it's like, are we just going to slow down? And I think when we all just took a slight peek under the hood, we realized I think we were all in a very similar place around wanting to do things as scrappy as possible, to test and learn, to figure things out. I mean, the 2 search bars, it's a very, very pointed example around, hey, we tried it. It's not as if we said, no, we're not doing it. We pull in designers. We say, let's just give it a go. Let's see the worst. Let's see the best. And you just kind of somewhere land in a really good middle, but a better middle than where you would have landed if you didn't try it. And so I think that was the material challenge, I think, it's the perception, right? And it's really just getting to a sense of we are all learning together, and the intent is always in the same place. And I think just going back to, what is the good intent if everyone is trying to do their best work?
Do you, in your role, do you end up working and trying to convince product managers within Atlassian who've maybe been there for a while, or are the groups separate enough that you have sort of the Loom product manager group? Are they different? Are they the same?
I think so there's a bit of, I would say there's kind of 2 sides of the coin, right? Like before the acquisition, it was like we had core product and growth. That was our mission. Let's build an awesome video, messaging tool driven by AI, and let's grow it. And when you come a part of a suite of apps, right? Acquisition aside, however you get there, it is about how do you integrate and how do you create a fluid, seamless system. It's about, what is an enterprise-grade ready product that is fit and ready for customers of 1,000+ seats. And our product market fit was always, squarely and just, in a shining way, small to medium-sized businesses. And so I think that was the piece that we were all kind of learning, and in a way, admittedly, we're all very green in, but we're hiring experts in. We're leaning into our Atlassian teammates to just give us that expertise. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road. Because when you start actually doing work together, that's when the values organically click, versus to say, we have shared values and, we're all on a mission together. Until that they have to solve problems together, it's almost fruitless to even try.
Is there a particular moment where the teams tried to solve a problem together and it didn't quite land?
I mean, I kind of, maybe my own coping mechanism is I mark the acquisition by years. And so like year 1 was very much around just like, let's keep our head down, let's keep focused. And one of our strategies in integration was let's just put Loom beams everywhere. Let's put a recorder button. Loom beam, sorry. Our mark, we call Loom beam, affectionately. But let's put little recorder, like Loom icons in Confluence and Jira. And we just had a strategy was just like put it everywhere. I don't know if that was a really in-depth strategy, but we weren't even versed enough to even know what was our intuition around where people are going to naturally record a video. And, when we first joined, our customer overlap was 3% between a Loom customer and an Atlassian customer. So that strategy was one where we tried it, and I will say, some worked better than others, but we definitely didn't invest in many of them because some of the entry points, it was less about where we were recording, and what we learned was it was more about, how do we use video to transform content to text, to transform it to visual, to transform it to project management, and that was, I think, the biggest learning. But we definitely just went wide and I think flopped for sure.
3% overlap, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. David, did you?
Yeah, I was thinking like the hardest thing for me when I started was I think my first message to some of the design leads, it's like, hey, it's nice to meet you. I'm not going to see you for 3 months. So we got to focus on building. So, did not follow any frameworks. And I would get some of these messages that would be like, hey, you need to prepare for this WER. I'm like, okay, what's that? It's our weekly experience review. But again, I think the thing that was like really hard because, we all want to collaborate. But then I think the thing that we kind of galvanize around is like really serving the customers. And we all serve teams of different facets, like across, within companies and across. So that was kind of like the thing that was the motivator for us. It's like, look, yeah, we'll ask for forgiveness on some of these things, but it's also the thing that's like, what was existential is like our customers have been wanting this. Like we cannot let them down.
They've been wanting AI.
Yeah, AI. So, that was my mindset. I was like, I'll figure out how to integrate and adapt later, and just be able to push that. But that was the thing that's hard. It's just like being like, okay, gonna be gone. We gotta do this.
So I have to ask, you said you're not going to talk to them for 3 months. So that was because you're just heads down shipping? And
So
like,
deep within our AI team.
You
right?
basically,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't matter what else is going on. I'm
Yeah.
going to laser focus on this thing because we have to get it right.
Exactly.
How did they feel about that?
I think the first year was fine. It was the second year when you told me that it was a bit more problematic. No, I think it's also, and Josh knows this as well, that anything that leads, and many of you I'm sure have been in this situation, anytime you are on the critical path for an announcement at your big company event, I think everyone understands it's heads down. I'm sure people were tweaking slides at 5 a.m. this morning. I think there's a lot of forgiveness and understanding for how intense it is to go through those launches. I just think the challenge is every year you have to get better. It can't be a crisis of heads down for 3 months because there's not just one team, there's 17 teams who are trying to get ready for team who all depend on each other. So as long as we get better each year, I think there's a lot of tolerance for it, but it's one of those things where sometimes I feel like the adrenaline of these big events causes everyone to lose their moorings a little bit on what a good way is to build products and to collaborate. But yeah, a lot of understanding about the lockdown for sure.
I like how you said these big events and sort of, anyway. So David, did you really tell him the second year in a row that you were going to lock down for 3 months and not talk to people?
Well, we'll see, right? It's almost hitting the 1 year.
You're talking
So I think our next fiscal year, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like, I kind of told my team, I'm like, look, we have this thing, like, we have to ship at all costs to get it out there, but we don't want this to be the behavior. And like what Charlie said, it's like, has to be better. We're not going to have the hall pass. We might still have it.
Might not get far down the hall anymore, but sure.
He didn't agree.
But I think that's the thing. Is just kind of like, especially as things are being transformative. I think that's the power of kind of what we heard about design. It's like, it's really our intentionality, just kind of upholding the product quality, having that sense of taste, and really kind of making sure that, we don't let those things slip and let things erode too. So we kind of said like, look, we can't use that, we always like, oh, we'll fix this post-GA, and it's just not an excuse anymore.
So I'd love to hear from this group as we sort of like wrap up. We've talked a lot about, design and your collaboration with each other and your ability to make trade-offs and whatever. What does it look like, maybe Charlie, you could wrap us up, your collaboration with senior engineering leaders? There was a little bit of product, but how does it work with senior engineering leaders at Atlassian?
I think because both engineering and design see themselves very much as builders, I find that's one of the easiest collaboration areas we have, and we've also been very lucky that our incentives are often the same. So a great example is the more we invest in the design system, the less that engineering has to do rework of code because they're under pressure around performance, they're under pressure around code reusability. So actually, I find engineering one of the most positive relationships because we can both be in the building together. And that's actually what was so exciting about a lot of the announcements today, is that you can see that interface between engineering and design getting closer and closer Because most of the disagreements with engineering, I tend to find, are just misunderstandings around intent, around what is easy and what is hard. So I think it's actually one of the best collaboration relationships that we have, and I can see it actually getting much better with the type of tools that we've been talking about today. So that was a nice segue back to the old product launches for you.
Amazing. I'm just glad you guys are here. Thanks to you all for a wonderful panel. I hope you agree we got some real talk and some real conversations and not platitudes about leadership. So big hand for y'all. Thank you.